What up? It's your boy Vigilante Styles, man. I'm out here doing my thing. You guys gotta be real happy about tuning in today, cause we're gonna go over some more Dr. Dre techniques, and I got some gems, bro. Fucking huge gems in this one. I also, I got a mix session up to one of my beats. We're not gonna mix that right now. We're going to try out some of the techniques, though, that I've been digging up off the internet. Digging up on all sorts of shit. So, first and foremost, what are we looking at? Dun, dun, dun. Studio Sound Magazine, right? From September 2001. Now, get this. And you're going to find this to be really, 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 really cool. Back in the day, right now, like, you can't find jack shit about Serbian Guinea, right? Other than like little stuff on a Gear Sluts forum or Gear Space forum, where they kind of talk a little bit about his techniques and some of the gear or plugins that they use. But they're not so transparent because they know that at this point, you can do anything they're doing. Now, back then, when Dr. Dre was doing this thing, he could tell you everything he's doing and you couldn't get his sound because you don't have his equipment. And you would probably never have access to it. Back in 2001, there was no way in the world you were going to be sitting behind an SSL console unless you had some money, big time, or you were working with the major players in the game. A lot of the time, your music was never going to ever even see the light of day in front of an SSL console. But, back then you would probably be mixing like on what do they call it, a Roland, what do they call it, VS 1880 or 2480 multi-track thing. And, back then digital was all the rave. Now we think digital sucks, but back then it was like, it was digital. Digital is the best shit ever, right? And, also, they back then too. You probably would have probably had a Porta Studio maybe of some kind, like a tape multi. That's what I had. I had a tape multi-track. I had a Porta Studio, not Tascam, but I had a Yamaha one. And dude, I had like 3-band EQ and just 4 tracks, and it takes cassette tapes. It was a piece of shit. It was a big time piece of shit. Nowadays it's like, oh wow, that's great. Like they even I think Studio One now has like a thing where you can turn Studio One into a Porta Studio. Why the hell would I want to do that? Like, would I want to turn a good digital studio into a old piece of shit? Now, an old analog studio is fucking amazing, right? It's wonderful. It's light years beyond digital, in my opinion, in terms of sound quality and everything. It just sounds so much fucking better, right? And that's what we're chasing, right? We've been chasing that sound. So let's chase it. And in this case, we have here, excuse me. Let me check something. All right, I'm good. So anyway, this is Studio Sound Magazine. We got Dr. Dre. Once again, now we talked about Dr. Dre in my last video, but now I'm going to show you the stuff that he wouldn't tell you now because you could probably just do it and make him irrelevant. Back then, you had to have his gear. So he had no problem telling you, because this was also read, this wasn't read by a casual dude. This was read by like pros and stuff who are just, or nerds or whatever, who are into it. That kind of stuff, and probably working out of studios or intern at studios or whatever, or just people interested in Dr. Dre's process. Trying to see if they could probably emulate it with cheaper gear and kind of get a similar sound. Well, in this case here, we got Dr. Dre. So he says, producing the future, 2001. So this is when this was the era of Chronic 2001, right? That loud ass fucking album that he put out. But also that came out in 99. So I think about 2001, he was like producing like Mary J. Blige, and I think 50 Cent was probably just barely hitting the scene. Exhibit, those guys. So just to put things in perspective, that's about kind of what was going on in 2001. So it's nice to have these magazines, man. This would have been shit like back in the day if I had this magazine, be sitting on the toilet instead of reading your phone. Instead of reading your phone on the toilet, this would be sitting on the toilet. So when dropping a deuce or whatever, you just go and you just go thumb through the magazine, man, and read some interesting stuff. So anyway, here. Oh, look at this. Before we even get to that, definitive film scoring. That's looks like a SSL 9000J. Oh, it's solid state logic. Boom. No wonder the SL9000 is a definitive film scoring console. So now you know what it's all about, right? So they talked about 24-bit analog to digital converters, 96K digital recorder. So it kind of gives you an idea, like if you were to use the plugin, like how it's supposed to. Oh, right here, boom, right here, SL9000J series. All right, so an SSL9000J, that's this bad boy nowadays. Yes, I pick them all up on Black Friday sales, That's this bad boy right here. So it'd be nice to know how to use it, right? I already checked it out in Plugin Doctor, man. It's legit. So anyway, let's go back to what we were looking at. I don't mix with it because it's too clean. Obviously, it's good for film, right? You need all that fidelity. But for hip-hop music, you kind of want to... I think for music in general, you have the tendency to push things too bright if you have that headroom. So I kind of like the limitation that the 4000 puts in, that if you push it too hard, you're going to get more harmonics, which means you're going to have smoother top end too, which is a nice thing, I think that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. You don't need things to be so sharp and just, piercing your ears. But for this case, for doing film scoring, you got to capture really, 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 you want that to be as high fidelity as possible because because people who listen to it don't want to hear a compressed string, right? They want dynamics. They want everything to breathe because they want to feel like they're at the orchestra. You know what I'm saying? Now, when you're making beats, on the other hand, you just want that shit bumping. You know what I'm saying? And if you have like too much dynamics is a good thing, but compression also kind of makes things more powerful sounding. And when it comes to like orchestral stuff, you're probably not going to be doing a lot of. The compressors on the 9000J are pretty robust, but that's just not what apparently it was designed. It was designed, to be done for people to mix all sorts of stuff on it, but it was used primarily for scoring orchestras, right? 20th Century Fox, O. Henry Sound Studios. So anyway, you guys came here for the Dr. Dre shit, right? So let's get past that. There's these old guys standing by the 9000J. Okay, I know that they're like really significant old guys, right? But anyhow. Oh, one other thing. Japan, Tokyo's Nihon Kogakuin Engineering Training Facility has installed a 48-channel AMEC 9098i production console. So for those who get the plugin, you might want to know how it was used, right? So this was done for concert events, broadcast media, music, entertainment, sound design, and audio engineering. Okay. And Shijinari Numazawa of the broadcast media department commented, as this new facility was going to be used on a commercial basis, we could not afford any downtime. The other factor was audio quality. This is a multi-purpose facility and not just for tracking and mixing. It's also used as a live TV production floor and a movie theater, a post-production studio, as well as general live performances. So the AMEC was a all-around weapon for the studio. You can mix music on it, you could do film scoring with it, you could do live TV production with it. And if you want to know what that is in plug-in form, it's this bad boy. Okay? For the record. This thing is a Swiss Army knife console. They used it for every fucking thing in the world. So, if you wanted to know, so this thing is pretty good, but for me, there's a sound that I like. I like that the SSL 4000 E series sound. I like it. I like the G sound too, but I kind of like that E. I don't know why. It just sounds good to me. I like this too, though. It's smooth, but to me, this is too much. I probably don't use maybe like 1/3 of this shit when I'm mixing. This is just a whole bunch of extra shit that just kind of fucks up the process for me. It's nice to have it though. I got it on Black Friday sale like about a year ago, and or about maybe 2 years ago, and I've used it on some stuff, you know, and it's cool. It sounds great, but it's really not something that I reach for right away, you know. But it sounds good. It's pretty clean sounding. But now you know how they used it back in the day. It would have been in a studio like this. Cool, huh? Are you guys nerding? Are you fucking nerding like I am? I'm fucking nerding. I'm glad you guys like my channel too. That's just a hangout spot. That's what it is. It's just a chilling spot, dude. As you guys are just going through YouTube, searching YouTube for all sorts of crazy shit and all these flashy videos. You just come here and chill with me, man, and I'm just dropping gems like a motherfucker all over the place. That's because I like to talk about this shit. So, anyway, let's get to the good shit. Fuck all this. Blah, 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 blah. Who's that guy? I don't know who he is. Let's continue on. That guy's in a studio. Okay, cool. What's this? This is a dual vocal combo. This is interesting, though, because then you can, like, look for plugins that do this shit. There's plugins that look like this, I know. What is this? This is Manly Laboratories. Langevin, dual vocal combo. Stereo mic pre, DI EQ, ELOP limiter. Cool. Yeah, I'm sure they have a plug-in version of this. Yeah, know the history of the gear that your plugins emulate, right? See, now here you have like this Sony, like that's what you would have had probably back in the day, like us version tier, mixers who are not mixing in the big studio with SSL consoles probably would have had something like this. Which is, you'd shell out some good money for that, probably about like $5,000 or $6,000 or something back then. But that's for like a medium grade but very serious studio. But it would not have been like on the level of SSL studio, $100,000 or more for one of their consoles. They were showing the computers. I like to take pictures of computers back in the day, guys, because if you had computers in the studio, your shit was state of the art. Now, if you have a computer in the studio, you could be a noob. It's just how things have changed. Focusrite, they've been around a while. Apparently, they made limiters and compressors as well. You know that Rupert Neve owned that company? That was actually one of his companies. But he left his actual Neve company. AMS bought him out. AMS used to make the AMS Reverb, and then they bought out Neve, and that's where they made the VR, the VX, and the 88R, whatever consoles and stuff. And then he went on to make Focusrite, and then he made another company called Rupert Neve Designs, and he worked with AMEC on one console, and that was the 9098i, which I just showed you the plug-in version of it. Okay, mastering. One-touch auto mastering. See, this bullshit has been around a long time, guys. Okay, it's long before Ozone. There was this bullshit, The Marantz. So it's not really mastering. I don't know what. Let's see. It's looks like it's just a CD burner, but it does it by Redbook standard, right? Okay, so I'm burning a CDR. Every time the laser stops, errors are created. Okay, it's a CD burner. Okay, and then onboard Auto Master enables you to produce a properly finalized CD ready for pressing. Simple, quick, and inexpensive. So it wasn't doing like EQ and compression and all this other stuff. It was just basically getting your... It was basically setting all your audio files, organize them to send them off for mastering or just to organize your already mastered music, so that you could send it off I'm sorry, not for mastering, for printing, distribution, right? Because you were going to go, back in the day, you would have to send your music to somebody to go burn you a bunch of CDs or print a bunch of tapes up, and then usually they also had like artwork and jewel cases and stuff. You'd have to send them your artwork, they make your jewel cases and stuff like that. Well, the good old days, man. Before nowadays, you just go to your SoundCloud, just hit upload and upload a fucking picture, whatever the fuck I've literally uploaded pictures of just memes and stuff I had just because I didn't have a picture. I was like, here's a fucking meme, and everybody can laugh at it. Maybe that might get their attention, listen to my music. Crazy shit. I'm getting to Dr. Dre, guys. I'm getting to him. Where the fuck is he? Dr. Dre, where are you? Dolby. Okay. There's so more SSL consoles. That just goes to show you back in the days, SSL was the shit. The shit. Right? So let's go back. God, I'm trying to get down there. Smart digital. Sound cards. You know? Like, whoa. Sound cards. Right? Adobe Premiere. God, like the very first version. Total junk compared to what it is now. Vegas Video. God, that's way back, man. MP2. Holy cow. Back then in 2001, people were still buying cassette tapes, and they were still buying, but most everybody had CDs. That's what it was. It was like CDs for everything. You had like the big wallet of CDs. For those who don't know, for the youngsters who were just, you know, shitting in diapers in 2001, who now are telling me how to fucking mix a song. I'm not saying I'm the greatest at mixing. I'm just saying. So SLS S8R. What is this? Okay, so that you can see they gave you like informative reports about like monitors and stuff. They go, oh, that's pretty flat responding. It's got a little bit of a low mid-range thing going on, which means that when you're mixing, you're probably going to cut these frequencies, which is good. It gets rid of mud. You're going to have nice, clean sounding mixes. Good shit. Come on, we got to get to the Dr. Dre stuff, man. Took a long time to get to it, huh? You guys are going to have to just like timestamp it. Here's when he starts talking about Dre 2 hours later. Wavelab. Somebody was talking about that with me, as a matter of fact. Steinberg Wavelab. I can't believe he's even using that. That's supposed to be a mastering thing, you know? This thing is ancient, dude. I don't know. I don't know if it's even still around. If it is, I can't imagine it being very good. Compared to just like I said, just using ozone or something. But I don't know, whatever. Maybe they still use it. I don't know. And then I've heard some other program that they use for mastering. Maybe it is Wavelab. I don't know. Got Pro Tools. Boy, we hate that program nowadays, don't we? Back then, you were definitely a pro using Pro Tools because it was the only DAW other than Cubase. And Cakewalk was trash. It was super trash back then. Cakewalk's pretty decent now, actually, but back then it was trash. FL Studio was just a drum machine. You know, that's all it was. It was literally just that little pattern block thing to make, you know, like a drum machine. That's all FL Studio was back then. It was literally just fruity loops, and that's all it was. You make little drum loops. So it didn't. It's not what it is. What it is today. Now it's the Pro Tools killer. But back then, Pro Tools was pretty much everything that you would need in a DAW back then. But you know, plugins sucked back then. They were trash. That's why people still wanted to use Gear. You know, I don't even think they had the SSL plugins yet from Waves. Those came out like shortly thereafter. And then you could start getting into it, but then they didn't have the processing power. Like all those sexy computers we saw in all these other pictures, they didn't have the processing power to probably even run one instance. Maybe not more than one instance, I mean, of a Waves SSL e-channel or something. Nowadays, you know, you could run that on a laptop you got at a pawn shop and just like run a full session with those plugins all across it. You just in the CPU. God, we finally got to Dr. Dre 2 million pages later. 48 pages later. Here we go. This is what you guys tuned in for. We want to know what's going on in his head. By the way, look behind him. An SL8000G+. If you want to know what an 8000 is, I think that is just a 4000, but with like 12 mix buses. That's all it is. Something like that. I think it's got Black Knob EQ, 242 EQ on it. So basically E-Series Black Knob EQs across the whole thing. I can't really tell from here though. Wait a second. I am wrong. Those are orange. Those are orange. So actually, this has pink knob. Yeah, see the pink on the top. This is a pink knob EQ. Well, not pink knob EQ. It's a G series EQ. Well, duh, it's a G plus, isn't it? That's this guy right here. If you want to know the plug-in version. So this was the attempt at making a Pultec. So you hit the EQ type, boom, there it is, orange. That's the orange knob EQ. That's the quote-unquote SSL Pultec. If you wanted to know, there it is. And by the way, Brainworks, Brainworks has it. So that's what he's looking at. That's what he has here. So that's nice to know, because I think, get this, right? There's a lot of disinfo, man, on the internet, guys. You gotta dig for this shit. And I dug this up. So I'm thinking, I don't know if it's Chronic 2001. Okay, but shortly thereafter, the shit Dr. Dre was working on. So I'm thinking like 50 Cent, right? Because 50 Cent came out like after this, right? So we're talking like 2002, so we're talking, In the Club and all that shit. That may have been mixed on an SSL 8000. That one right behind him, the 8000 G+, which would have had the Pultec EQ on it. The orange knob Pultec EQ. That's something to take note of for the noggin if you're chasing the Chronic 2001 sound. Not Chronic 2001 sound, I'm sorry. If you're chasing the Dr. Dre of the 50 Cent era sound, which was damn good. That was what he mixed on. So G Plus was a 4000 G with 12 mix buses, is what it was. And then orange knob on that particular console. So that's interesting. That makes me want to fuck around with it, to be honest. But anyway, so he invites me into the control room. Dre's dream team warming up, ensconced in Studio B engineer Vito, aka Mauricio Iragori. That's a guy you want to look up. Google him. He might talk a little bit more about how they did stuff back then. Is tinkering on the SSL 8000, while Mike Elizondo, bass player, and Scott Storch, the expert on keys, file into the studio. The activity seems normal, even mundane, until Dr. Dre walks into the room where the vibe shifts up a level of energy and respect to his creative talent is evident in the casual observer. Okay, so contrary to media reports that his recording sessions are filled with drugs, alcohols, and gang warfare, there's none of that. Come on, there's none of that. Dude's a pro, man. He's a serious pro, man. And in the studio, there's none of that shit. That's another thing, too. Like, you might see, like, Snoop or something, maybe smoke a J or something in the fucking studio. But for the most part, people were there to work. So that's something I want to kind of imprint on people, too. If you're going to be a producer / engineer and you have a studio, motherfucker, we here to work. This isn't fuck around time. And the reason why is because you should be charging them by the hour. So if they want to fuck around, it's going to cost them money for burning all that time just fucking off, falling asleep on the couch and shit. All the meter's running, And they can complain about that shit at the end, but the meter's fucking running. So anyway, Dr. Dre can be described as many things: a catalyst, a astute businessman. Right. We know that. We know Dr. Dre, man. We know his stuff. He came up with G-Funk. Yeah, well, kind of, yeah. A lot of that's Sam Snead also, guys. Let's not forget. He's kind of the one that did a lot of the production on a lot of the Death Row stuff when Dre got credit for. And then there was Daz Dillinger, who produced a lot of stuff too that Dre got credit for. But Dre does a lot of the engineering though. So this is where it's worth it for us, Like he had an engineer, but he did most of the mixing. So Dre's basically the audio engineer who's got the producer title. But I mean, he was still producing, but in a different way. Like, you make that beat and you do the bass line over here, and I want to hear you record that vocal over and over again. So like a traditional producer in a way. He's still controlling the vision, but he also, hands on. He was on the. That's why they show an SSL console behind him and not a drum machine or something, or a keyboard. Like, he wasn't doing the musical stuff. He was getting everybody to do what they should be doing to kind of get the sound that he thought sounded good, and then he was going to mix that shit. So he was like an engineer plus. So anyway, let's Aftermath Records, blah 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 blah. Ah, here we go. Now he's starting to talk about stuff that you want to know, right? His mixing things. So we used to work together a lot. I eventually started working by myself on mixes. See, he started mixing shit by himself. That's how he got good at mixing. I wanted it to sound a certain way, and I felt nobody was going to be able to dig in my brain and get the sound out that I wanted except me. Yeah, I can agree with that. You fall in love with your own mixes, you know. Every day I would learn something new. I'm actually still learning with all the new technology. Through the years, as any engineer would, Dre has defined his choices in audio gear. He's candid about his love for any and all SSL solid-state logic consoles, as well as the Studer A827. So there's another thing. That's a tape machine, right? So if you want to look up a plug-in version, Studer A something 827. No, it's a 9. Tape machine. We want a plug-in version of it. Sorry. So let's see. Universal Audio has a Studer A800 tape recorder, so you can get that. J37 is not even remotely, is it? No, it's not a Studer. Anyway, not even close. Slate Virtual Tape Machine. Yeah, Slate Virtual Tape Machine is probably a Studer. T-Rax Tape Machine Collection, a Studer A80. Okay, so you're getting pretty close. And then he talks about, he always uses Quantigy 499 tape, right? So Quantigy 499 tape. Well, put it in, right? I've looked this up before, you can see. So 456 seems to be the standard. Quantigy states 499 as being superior. Okay, that's gear space. 456, you can get that on Slate virtual tape machines. They give you 456 tape and they give you the GP9. GP9 is very transparent tape, 456. So 456 is probably going to be close to 499. Probably even better than 499. Like, people like 456 better anyway. So there you go. So just use Slate virtual tape machine. There's your thing. If you want chasing Dr. Dre's sound, go with that and use the 456 tape. His mic of choice is the Sony C800G, right? So good luck getting one of those. Those are expensive. Which is the only mic he ever uses on vocals. When recording vocals with the Sony mic, he runs it through a Neve 1073 mic pre. Okay, so that's this, right? If you need to know. Plug-in wise, 1073 mic pre, you're going to have one right here. You can also get the Slate virtual tape machine too, but this is it. This is your 1073 right here. Microphone preamp. I'd probably turn the compressor off. Don't worry about using the EQ. Just mess with that. Just pass the signal through it. And boom, the 1073. In the box, right? And it's legit. Lindell 80 is amazing. Sounds great. Sounds very legit. Okay, and then runs through the SSL compressor and a DBX 160. Okay, so SSL compressor can be any one of those channel strips. If you're chasing the more modern, not more modern, but more of the Dr. Dre of this era, you're probably going to use the 4000G set to the orange knob for the, the Pultec EQ. That's for chasing Dr. Dre's, big, loud sound of the early 2000s. If you're trying to chase the Dr. Dre of the 90s, be it E-series on the brown knob. So, and the DBX 160, if you want to know what plugin that is, there's two. You can get one from Analog Obsession, which is completely free, or you can go to, if you want to just get one from Waves, theirs is really good. I don't know where the hell I put it. Where the fuck is it? DADB. Oh, here it is. God, I can't see anything today. There it is. DBX160. So you want to know how he uses it? Let's see how he uses it. He emits to very little EQ on the vocal. That's when recording, okay? Mixing, you do mix with EQ. I mean, you EQ the mix, but not when you're recording. He says, I usually record vocals flat. The only time I EQ in recording is if I know for a fact that I'm going to want it to sound like that during the mix. He continues, when I want a little more crispness out of the mic, I use the 1073 EQ. 1073 EQ, right here. Right here, buddy. If you need this for vocals, this is why you need to get the Lindell 80 channel. So now you have your mic pre, there's your 1073 mic preamp, and this says 1084, just switch it there, and now it's 1073. There's your 1073 EQ, okay? And then he says just a little on the top, right here, that's the top. That's boosting when you go to the left, and that's cutting when you go to the right. There you go, and you get your filter. But he wouldn't really mess with it. He says he doesn't really mess with EQ, but he will do a little bit of a boost on the top end to bring some crispness out of a dull microphone. And of course, adding a little drive there from the 1073 preamp. I'll just leave that in there. So, let's see. With just a little high end, right? I don't use too much compression, maybe 4:1 with the output set to 0. 4:1 with the output set to 0, right? So I think he's talking about on the DBX. Yeah, outputs set to 0. There they are. See? He's talking about the DBX 160. So 4:1. You're just adjusting threshold, output set to 0. Everything's already right here. Just a default. You just load it up just like this. And then control the threshold. And to me, what sounds good is in between 5 and 10 decibels gain reduction. I don't know if he talks about how much gain reduction he does, but that's what sounds good to me. So just basically default and just mess with the threshold knob to taste. Let's go back. I usually do my compression afterwards. I like the compressors on the SSL. I usually have the ratio up to about 8 or 10 on a lot of things. There it is. Dr. Dre said it, damn it. 8 to 10 on a lot of things. So he's compressing the shit out of everything. Aren't you worried about transients? He's not. But actually what you're doing is you EQ into the compressor. So if you're compressing pretty hard and then EQing into it, what you're doing is you're smoothing your transients, get more harmonics out of it, especially on a 4000 series. 9000, you gotta mix differently on that. I'm sorry, because everything's so clean and so brittle on 9000s. You try to drive it and you're gonna get some ugly sounding shit out of it. That's all I know. But on the 4000s, it's gonna sound better the more you drive it. Plugins also, since they're meant to emulate what the gear does, especially the Brainworks ones. Dre, a diehard fan of analog recording, is one of the few producer engineers left in the world that have not jumped to the Pro Tools bandwagon. And true to form, he does not make apologies for that. Okay, so he's not a Pro Tools guy either. Not because of DAW wise, right? He's not saying, I like FL Studio. Back then, FL Studio was nothing, the way it is now. Well, a lot of people like FL Studio. But he didn't like digital. He liked to stay analog because digital was crap back then. Digital nowadays is very good. He says he tried digital a couple times. There's just something about it for him. It's not fast enough yet. So he has latency issues. He had to go back and fix things. Right? He didn't like latency. On tape, there's no latency, right? I tried to record into Pro Tools, got one of the best Pro Tools operators down to record the music, and it's not just me. Not yet, he concludes. Okay, so it's too bland, for him, and the latency issues. They have to always go back and realign shit, and that just fucks the vibe up. Just fucks it up, Nowadays we have zero latency type of stuff, We had the Sony 3348 in the studio, tried a couple songs on it, and it didn't give me the sound I wanted. The kick drum started sounding transparent. It wasn't good. So he doesn't like clean, digital, lifeless kick drums, right? He likes some analog vibe on that. Well, back then, Brainworks didn't exist, right? And we didn't have these badass plugins that emulate the gear that he used. So nowadays, that's just something to take into account, though, is that you might want to take your kick drums and dirty them up a little bit. Throw them through something, an analog emulation of some kind, to give that kick drum some vibe. When it's time to mix down, Dre makes the unusual choice of mixing straight to DAT. So he didn't go to a tape machine, he mixed straight to DAT. That is a tape machine, but it's not really. It's digital audio tape, which is not tape. It's tape, but it's not a tape sound. It's just recording the bits. So it's basically like a floppy disk in a way. So you can imagine the DAT machine is a key element in any studio he chooses to work in. Dre's DAT machine preference is the Panasonic 3800. So a DAT machine has no sound. Okay, so it's not changing the sound. It's literally just code. And it's the same thing as basically you saving a WAV file on your computer. It's the same shit. The question on every young rapper's mind, though, is what gear does Dr. Dre turn to make his signature beats? Okay, so he used the MPC 3000, Korg Triton. He used the Korg Triton predominantly as a MIDI, kind of like just like a big-ass MIDI controller, you know? I'm sure he probably got some sounds out of it, but mostly it was just to control sounds in the box. So he did operate in the computer a little bit for modules, not just computer, but like they had sound modules back then, like the EMU FAT and stuff like that, like to get sounds out of those. That's going to go through like a computer or something, and then via MIDI, and then you're going to control that with your keyboard. So that's what he was using it for. There you go. Usually that's the controller. The Nord Lead and Korg's MS2000. Lately we've been trying out the Alesis Andromeda A6. SST actually recommended a Waldorf Q. We seem to like that one as well. They let us try it for a day and we said, yes, we'll keep it. You might also find a nice array of vintage keyboards on hand, including those Rhodes, Wurlitzer, Moog, and Roland. Right? But Vito says what you won't find in use on a Dre session is a lot of outboard gear. That's for mixing, okay? We don't use a lot of outboard gear. Dre concurs. I doctor the vocal as far as de-essing and maybe some low-end EQ for the kicks. We use a lot of EQ on the console and all the limiters. Okay, so he dropped another gem on you here a little bit, that he does use some outboard EQ for kicks. And de-essing a vocal that's outboard, right? Because they don't use plugins back then. So he used a hardware de-esser. So I like this one that sounds like a hardware de-esser, and this is from Analog Obsession. It's called Loads, right? And you've probably seen it in a couple other videos of mine. I like to turn on the band button and then just start messing with the threshold. Sounds amazing. Wonderful. It's so clean in the way that it de-esses. Best thing in the world. And it's free, by the way. And then low-end EQ for the kicks. If I had to guess what it's probably 1073. Because he talked about using a 1073 outboard on vocals. So I'm guessing it would be that same piece of gear probably for kick drums. And why? Because Neves were known to have good low end, right? So I'm thinking he probably used a 1073 for kicks. So once again, that's that Lindell 80, Or you could probably go to Analog Obsession and maybe get the Brit bundle, and that has a 1073 on it, and you can probably go grab the I'm sure he has a 1073 EQ in there, and you can just slap on for free, by the way. You just go to Analog Obsession's Patreon and go get it, and you can pick up the Brit bundle, which has the Neve 1073 mic pre and the EQ, and I think a 2254 compressor as well. So, but you can pick them up individually. You can just say, well, I just want the mic pre and I just want the 1073 EQ. I don't pick it up because I already have the Lindell 80, right? Might as well use it because I spent money on it. So anyway, and then he likes the sound. Okay. Oh, and we use a lot of EQ on the console and all the limiters. Now you go, you mean to tell me the SSL console has a limiter? Kind of. It's this. It's taking the ratio and going all the way to the right. Now it's limiting, right? I think that's what he means. That's the guy told me about this. Is the classic SSL smack on drums. Is to go push it all the way to the right, push the release all the way to the left, and then adjust the threshold. Then you get your SSL smack, you know. So that's another thing. So, and he likes the sound of the quad compressor. The quad compressor is this dude right here. It's the SSL bus compressor. They don't always look like this. This looks like an outboard one, right? Because it's a townhouse bus compressor. But I mean, it's still in operation. It's the same thing. It sits on my master bus first thing, right? Because it's the first thing because everything sums into this, right? So the summing, right? All the channels here route into the bus compressor to get glue, right? So you're going to glue the mix at the end. And there are two ways that people set their bus compressor. You could set it like this. It's called cross eyes, which is slowest attack, fast release. That's kind of a popular way to do it. You'll get the kick drum will poke through the mix really well, and the compressor won't be compressing too hard. Oops, I just bumped into my mic. The compressor won't continue reacting. So basically the attack of the kick drum or transients of any kind will come through first, get compressed a little bit, and then it backs off quickly. And that gives a nice glued sound, but at the same time, so kind of somewhat transparent, and it kind of makes things a little bit punchier, and it glues things really well. The other one is to use slowest attack, let the attack come in, and then auto release, which is, this is a long release. Auto release then is just basically when it's not getting any sound, it'll release then. So that's pretty fucking long, right? Because, you're talking about a whole mix, right? You're gluing with the auto release. That's another one that's pretty famous. Ratio is always 2, I think. Maybe when you do it with the auto release, you could be at 4-1, but I think it's always 2-1. And I just do the cross-eye technique. It just works. Okay. And let's take a look. So he likes the sound of it on the mix bus. That's the SSL quad compressor in the center of the console. Dre knows his way around a studio. He had a 4000 EG, right? So that means it was, I believe, a G series console maybe an E series console with G EQs, probably half and half. Or maybe it's the other way around. It's probably a G series console with E series EQs, black knob EQs, by the way, half and half. We did a lot of Eminem's first record at my home studio. So if you're chasing that sound, like the Eminem and the Chronic 2001, so we know it's a 4000 EG, which would be a mixture of E and G channels. Probably E on drums, which I've heard a lot, that people use the E on the drums because it's more aggressive on drums, and then the G because of its mid-range punch and its warmth on other instruments, guitars, and vocals. Okay, and he did it in his home studio. He eventually removed the home studio from his home because he wanted to feel like he was going to work, for one, not just doing like I'm doing, right? Come home from work and then actually do music. Since that's his day job, is music, he doesn't want to feel like he's home all the time, right? And plus, sometimes you have to work with people, and there's just some people you don't want in your house. Yeah, I told a friend of mine that too. Yeah, you don't want just everybody going to your house to record, man. There's some people you don't want in your house. You don't know what they're up to, the criminal shit they be getting involved in. So he preferred to work at a commercial recording facility. Yeah, someplace neutral, right? So, you're there to work, for one. Second of all, they have the gear, and third of all, no one has to know where you live. Like, you can go home at peace. I don't know if Dre actually sold his home studio. I'm just probably thinking he doesn't work out of it. So, I mean, like, he works in it, like, by himself, but he goes to a commercial studio to meet everybody else. That's how I would do it. I'd be like, well, yeah, I go home. I got my home studio, but you motherfuckers can't be around here. I'll go meet you at a studio to go do stuff. Right? My house is my sanctuary. So they go to Larrabee West, Encore, Record 1. Okay. And the equipment is important, but to be honest, I'm still working on the same board I worked on since 1990. Not the exact same one, because we already found out he's an 8000 G+, he's, 4000 EG. That wasn't what he started with. He started with a 4052 E series brown knob EQ SSL, right? So what he's meaning to say is he's worked on the same style. So basically a 4000 series console his entire career up to this point. The 8000G Plus was just a 4000G with 12 mix buses. So it's still a 4000 series. It's basically the same consoles that he's been working on since 1990. And now the SSL 4000's been around since like 1979 or so. So I mean, it's an old workhorse, you know. So I guess that's the end of it. God, finally, right? No, there's more. So I think he talks about D12 here. Okay, they were expecting them to be something, and then it just didn't happen. Oh, they were going to do the Wash. Dre fans can look forward to a Snoop Dre reunion with the release of the movie they're currently filming together called The Wash. The Wash hadn't even come out yet. They were working on it at that time. Holy fucking cow. That's fucking old, man. That's definitely before 50 Cent, you know? Whoa, shit. Okay, so that's the end of it there. And, you know, I mean, I could sit there and just do a video talking about all these. So there's that guy sitting in front of his badass computers, that can't even run about 2 or 3 SSL Waves SSL plugins on it before crashing his computers. But hey, that's cool for back in the day, though, huh? That shit, man, he's probably got like 24 megabytes of information right there just looking at us. Wow. God. Anyway. Now, back then, you know, to have a good studio, you definitely had to be more analog than digital back then. Digital was really just for tape, you know, just to replace the tape machine. And maybe for some editing, you know, once again, yeah, for the tape machine, like, oh, I'm going to move something over instead of having to cut a piece of tape and splice it somewhere or whatever, you know. I know I've been just like going through this for a while. But this is some interesting info, like, is it not? Like, I should probably break this up in a couple of videos, because I have, like, a whole bunch of shit. Like, we said, what was the 8000, right? 8000G, I got Gear Space thing where they were talking about it. And basically, it's just got a bunch of mixed buses, right? I think they were saying that on the 8000, I think you can easily have an E-Series board with pink 292s. Some people even swap out the pink knob cap so the console will look like it's a bunch of 242s. Okay, that's just stuff they were talking about on that. Here, we got this one here about the history of it. So, there's the G-Series 292 GEQ. And that's the pink knob. And then, so you might see black on the bottom, but they call it pink knob because of the pink knobs. That's the difference between that and the 242 EQ. So it's 292. So it's probably had a lot of similarities, but with that different. The pink EQ does kind of takes a dip, you know, as you push it up. So it takes like a high mid dip, and then as you push the shelf up. So it's an interesting thing. And then we go on to, they mentioned something about 8000s, wherever the hell they are. 9000J. Okay. The last 4000G Plus delivered is now located in Atlanta. Huh. That's where I be, guys. I don't know if it's still there. Okay, here we go. The 4000 has 4 mixed buses, right? So 2X stereo or left, right, center, surround, right? And that's it. That's what the 4000 has. The 6 and 8000 have 6 or 8, hence were developed for TV or film mixing. Okay, so not 12 mixed buses, my bad. 8. 8000 G Plus has 8 mixed buses. Duh. You know how I confused it? Because Harrison Mixed Bus has 12, or the 32C has 12, I think has 12 mixed buses. So there you go. You had 8 buses. That's usually for film mixing, because you definitely want to bus stuff when you got like 300 tracks to work. Well, they had to comp a lot of tracks. It's crazy for film and TV. But yeah, there you go. So there's that. I got other shit, man, but we'll focus on that another time, huh? Let's mix I'm not gonna leave you guys with nothing, right? We're gonna do some mixing. I am curious about that Pultec EQ. God, am I curious about it. I know I set this up to use my E-Series with the brown knob. Yeah, I'm gonna switch everything to brown knob. because we like that classic Dre sound. But I'm just curious about the Pultec. Fuck it. Why you when you let's fucking use it, right? Okay, I'm gonna use it, but I'm not saying that that's like, oh, that's gonna be my shit now. I just want to try it out because it's interesting, right? That exists. So let me switch these out to G's real quick. The G's and the hustlers. Yeah, let me switch it out to G's real quick. Okay, this is kind of the drawback with FL. I can't just slap it across the whole session real quick. I have to do this one at a time. Kind of sucks. But this is in the session where I made the beat, so it's not really the same. If it were like a session where I had imported like audio files, then I could then it would be different, right? Then I could then run the whole thing across the whole, like I could then select them all and quickly put the plugins across the whole session. So while I do this, give me a second. As I'm mixing, I'll switch them to Pultec EQ. That's what the Pultec is, by the way, for my buddy Amazeus. The brown knob's not the Pultec, it's the orange knob. So we know now, right? We know. I'm glad you guys like hanging out with me, man. I know some people who don't want to watch my shit. That's cool, man. They can go fuck off, right? But I like to talk about techniques, all sorts of stuff, and try out new stuff. Like, hell yeah. Let's go on airplane mode. All right. Let's X that too. All right. We free up our computer resources, right, to do shit. Let's mix this. This video wasn't really intended to be predominantly the mixing video. It was about the Dr. Dre thing. But I gotta try this. I gotta try this Pultec EQ. I've never done it before. Let's try it. Okay, damn it. That fucking orange knob EQ sounds fucking wonderful. Holy fucking cow. Guess what, too? That is the only emulation that exists for that EQ in the box. Waves doesn't make it. They make a G channel, but it's only pink knob. UAD doesn't even make a G channel. This is the only one that exists, period, in the world of any plugins. It's the only one. This is the only one that will give you the orange knob, quote unquote, Pultec EQ, SSL EQ. That shit sounded fucking great. You know, okay, you ever watch Mike Dean's mixing videos, right? Shout out to Mike Dean, right? And why am I shouting him out? Because, I mean, dude, he's a legend, right? It is what it is, right? I don't know him personally, but I'm just saying, like, he's a legend. We like to study his stuff. He uses, if you watch one of his videos, like, he throws Pultecs on stuff as his main EQ. There's a reason behind that, right? Because he wants this. He wants this EQ. He doesn't have it. He didn't know that it exists. I mean, you know, there's a lot of these pros right now, man. They don't know. They're not hip to all the new plugins, man. They're using a lot of the old shit, or they're creating their own plugins. You know, there are people creating plugins in their name and stuff, but they're using a lot of old shit, man. They don't even know that this exists. If he knew this existed, he probably would use it. You know, Michael Brower's using the 9000 because he likes it, because he's used to working on a SSL 9000 J series, especially, just because, you know, he fell in love with the console. And there's a reason why they're doing this. Now, Pultec is typically just the high and the low, right? So you're attenuating. This is what a Pultec looks like if you want to see it. Let me save this because I like that mix I just did. So I'm just going to grab from Analog Obsession here. We got Rare SC. This is a Pultec. Okay, so this is how Pultec typically operates, right? So you have your attenuation, right? This one's got some mid-side stuff too, but it's linked right now, left and right. So you pick your attenuation, like how much you want to attenuate, 5, 10, 20, right? Hertz, right? So it's your attenuation. But anyway, this is another attenuation. So attenuation here, so let's say, like, for instance, I want to do a boost at 8K, right? So you put it to 8, and this is the top end, right? And probably leave it on broad if you want, or you can make it sharper if you want. You know, this is going to be a tighter Q. Basically, this is your Q knob. And then, like, when you attenuate, you're taking things away. This is a filter. This is a filter, so it's like filtering stuff. But a kind of a trick that they do is, like, they'll filter out, like, go up to 3, right? And then boost 3. So there's your boost, right? So you're just turning it up. You're not cutting, you're boosting. If you want to cut away, you're going to attenuate. So you're going to use basically the filter, and it's going to remove to a certain degree. And you want to attenuate where? 20, 10, or 5, right? And then you're going to boost up. So by doing so, you're cutting away, and then you're boosting right there, and you're getting, like, sharper transients. It's I don't know, it's just crazy. Like, you do it on the low end too. Just try it out, and you can play around with it. You can go, okay, well, that sounded cool, but I want more low end to come in. Go down to 2. But I don't want to boost this any higher. I just want to bring in a little bit more low end. Go back to 2. You know, once again, your low frequency knob here. And that's essentially what a Pultec is. But except that here on the 4000G series console, G+, with the orange knob, you get low, mid, and high mid frequencies as well. And it's not attenuating per se. Maybe it is. I'm not really sure. I don't know, because I need to look at it in Plugin Doctor under orange mode. All right, so you guys got my curiosity, right? Let me pull this. This is a video full of gems, right? It's full of gems. So let me end the session here. Anyway, you guys have to hear it. It sounds great. Making sure I'm not... Okay, you can hear me. I'm not big keen on showing off my desktop, but who gives a fuck, man? I don't have anything on there. I play Halo, guys, by the way. If you guys want to play with me on Halo Infinite, I play there. So let me go in. I want to put this bad boy in here. I want to see what the Pultec's doing, dude. I'm sorry, I have to know what the Pultec EQ is doing. We gotta turn off the dynamic section because that screws everything up. Because it's automatically gating the noise. So let's turn that off and switch it to the Pultec EQ. Okay, so here's what the Pultec EQ is. All right, so you're getting a nice boost here. So you got a good low and let me turn the filters off. All right, now we can see a little bit better what it's doing. Okay, so when you're pushing up, you're getting a good low mid shelf. It's set to 200. I guess that's the peak. So I mean, it's boosting everything all the way up to like 2,000 almost. Okay, very nice. If you turn off analog, then it's just one channel, but it's still got all the non-linearities. So we'll just do it like that so we can see what it's doing. Okay, and then this is the you're getting a bell, right? Good. Another bell. And then the top, you get a high shelf. Oh, but I see. Okay, get it. Look, as you boost it, it cuts. I guess that's what makes it a Pultec. I don't fucking know. What about the bell curves? Kind of do the same thing. We'll have to look at the Pultec now just to kind of see if it's doing the kind of the same shit. And with the filters in, what's it doing? Yeah. It's definitely a nice sounding EQ. There's no doubt about that. Okay, got a tight Q there. And it doesn't... Is it a proportional Q? Not really. Yeah, it's not. It's not proportional Q. So you get proportional Q on the regular EQ. Or maybe not. Maybe that is proportional Q. Fuck, I don't know, man. Okay. But they call this the Pultec. Let's look at it as a bell. Yeah. No cramping. Yeah, definitely no cramping. See, it's legit, man. There's no cramping. This thing really operates like the real analog gear. Huh. I mean, I'm curious. What makes it special? Oh, that cut. Look at that cut. That cut's very Pultec-like. On the bell. Maybe that's what it is. If you do this cut and then you do the boost. Nah, I don't know. That's supposed to be it though. But it sounds great though, don't get me wrong. I'll have to just kind of Google it or something. Let me pull this up again. Let's look at the actual Pultec, right? So let me put rare SE in there. Let's look at our actual Pultec. What's it doing? Alright, so when I boost... Oh, I have it boosting very low. Excuse me. Oh, I see. Probably like there. Okay, so take a look at this. When I'm boosting here, it's kind of bringing everything up. Of course, I don't see it pulling down much. Well, that's probably what the attenuation is, right? See how that's doing that? Okay, yeah, it does have some very Pultec-like. Like this is the actual Pultec, but I can see now why they call it the Pultec. The SSL EQ has very Pultec-like movement. Let's take a look at the bottom end. Attenuate, boost. Yeah, okay, so it does have very, very Pultec-like movement. That's the actual Pultec. So if we go back to it, now you can kind of see how that EQ works. Right, so turn off dynamics, turn off analog, and yeah, it's got Pultec-like characteristics in the way that the EQ moves. Probably on the top and the low end. Yeah, that has a Pultec-like bottom end. If I were to switch this back to the pink knob, yeah, see, it's different. It's different. This is more pokier bottom end here. Oh, well, I should turn these off. Turn off the filters. Okay, so now it's not so pokey, but it's kind of okay. I got a round bottom there. Yeah, okay. Check out the top. Okay, see how it does that dip? That's what the pink knob EQ does. Dips it. Actually, on the 9000 series does that shit too. So that's an interesting characteristic. All right, so when we go here, you don't get that. You are getting somewhat of a dip though still, as you push up. But that's very Pultec like. Pultec does the same thing, from what I'm seeing, when you attenuate it. Get tighter bells. Tighter bells sound nice. And then you just get a nice big old bottom end here. But it has a different kind of like response when the filters are on, which is how you're probably going to use it anyway with the filters already engaged. But still, you get some really solid low end out of this thing. Pretty interesting. So there you go. Hope you guys enjoyed that little bit of extra stuff going on here. So you guys got quite a bunch out of me today. You got a magazine, a mix, and experimentation on an EQ that you can't get anywhere else except at Brainworks. Like, that's crazy. And also knowing that that's part of Dr. Dre's sound around the time 50 Cent came around. And you get to see it in Plug-in Doctor, what it was doing. You get to see all that shit, man. What a fucking video you guys got. This is like a Christmas present. There, Merry Christmas, motherfuckers. Well, anyway. Now you guys are good, man. You guys are real good, man. I'm glad to have every one of my subscribers. And if you do like this video and you're not a subscriber, subscribe. Do it. Right? Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when I'm uploading videos like this. You never know when I decide to drop massive gems on everybody. Right? You learned so much shit today, dude. Like, I guarantee you, if you were to go to like Full Sail, they wouldn't teach you this shit in a whole semester. You learn in one fucking video. You know? One semester, you barely get by. This is how we turn on Pro Tools. This is how we use the Pro Tools stock compressor. This is what an EQ does on Pro Tools stock. Okay, now give us thousands of dollars and go fuck off, right? Then at the end, you get to sign this little piece of paper. Look, you're a certified audio engineer with Full Sail or whatever, insert school here, right? And then you can go work at a studio and then learn this shit later. Or you can just watch my videos. Woohoo, watch my videos, and we talk all sorts of shop around here. That's what you're here for. Not here for, yeah, you can watch me mix. So what? How boring is that, right? It's better to talk about stuff, right? Because then you can get these techniques and incorporate them into your workflow. And you might go, okay, maybe I should go pick up that plugin so that I can have that EQ, or with your stock or not stock EQ, whatever EQ you like to use. Maybe you have the Kirchhoff EQ. Maybe it already has these curves in there. You know what I'm saying? Just, but now you know what they do and where that comes from. So when you see that curve, you're going, oh, okay, that's that Pultec curve that they had on the SSL 4000 G, plus consoles and the 8000s and stuff. They had that on there. Yeah, So there you have it, man. It's your boy Vigilante Styles. If you like my videos, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell like I said, and until we meet again, I'm out. Peace.